All right, one last titan of industry here, and then one other major player in the same time frame who was working on a bit of a different area. So this is John D. Rockefeller. After the Civil War, Rockefeller launched an oil refining business in Cleveland, Ohio. And as we talked about earlier, that business is going to be growing and growing and growing throughout the 1800s, and so Rockefeller's business, but also his ruthlessness, is going to come into play to become one of the biggest monopolies that the United States has ever seen. So Standard Oil was founded in 1870. So that's the name here, the that you'll of most concern. It becomes this behemoth of a company, and it works with wealthy investors to buy up other refineries, to eliminate competition, starts moving into other states and moving beyond just refineries. And so they own the barrel factories, they own terminal warehouses and pipelines and freight cars, marketing of it, and everything was just under one roof. And so it's a vertically integrated major corporation, and ends up controlling access to 90% of the oil in the United States. This is just a massive amount of control that this one group has. A lot of it broke up, was broken up, over time, and the Exxons and the BPs and all those today are descendants of the world that Standard Oil created. In some cases not directly, but were influenced by that industry that it built up and had so much control over. So this becomes the symbol of monopoly. So if you jump down the links below this video, you'll see two links that I have there, just about Standard Oil. One is a little shorter, about it's from a museum and a person kind of talking about Standard Oil in general. And then the other one is if you want to do a bit of a deep dive on Standard Oil, it's a lecture from a specialist on this topic. And they go into just a lot more detail on Standard Oil itself, its importance and legacy. And it's honestly, it's a little bit of a dull video. It's the way that it's shot is dull, because it's kind of just a recorded lecture from way back in a big room. And so it might be one of those that you just kind of listen to in the background rather than actually sit there and watch it, because it's just a person standing a long way away. So that might not work as well as a video. But anyway, keep an eye on that and take a look at it if you can. That'd be worth your time. So Standard Oil was the big monopoly of the area. Not to say that U.S. Steel wasn't, because it was also in the 60% range, but not quite as much. But this was one of the big ones. And then finally is J.P. Morgan in the area of finance. So the area of finance tends to go hand in hand with big business, corporations, and those sorts of things. And so J.P. Morgan was a investment banker, came from a finance family, was sort of second generation, worked as an accountant, and then worked in his father's banking company. By the 1870s, he's a partner in a firm and works in U.S. government financing. And so he's a major player. By 1895, the end of the century, it's one of the most powerful financial institutions in the world. Just a major player, heavily connected to the British financial system, which had been the financial hub of the world. London had been the financial hub of the world. And so Morgan is part of the group that makes the U.S. also one of those financial hubs of the world. But he was a broker, financial manager for railroads. He facilitated reorganizations and helping to reduce competition in a lot of cases, working kind of hand in hand with the big railroad corporations to make all that happen. And even when we hit the financial panic in 1893, his group is able to help resupply the U.S. Government's gold reserve to back up the Treasury, basically. So this is a group that's powerful enough to loan money to the federal government, and so that's a massively powerful group. If you're backing up the the government of the country that you're in, it's a odd balance of power there, but it's quite true. And so he helped arrange mergers of corporations such as GE. The U.S. Steel Corporation, he was involved in that. He had interest in ocean and shipping liners across the Atlantic. The Titanic was under his umbrella, even though he wasn't necessarily a lot involved in it. He was actually booked for the maiden voyage of the Titanic, but had to cancel due to sickness. So he dodged a bullet there, as we all know. But that was part of his financial world, was the financing of that particular project. And one interesting thing about Morgan is that he helped develop and protect the idea of a trust. Now, the trust is an interesting sort of financial entity in that at the time, the way it worked is people could bring their shares of, say, a company and basically give it to the trust that was developed by Morgan and his group. And then that trust would hold those shares. They would technically own the share, but the people in turn would be given a share of the trust. And by owning a share of the trust, then they own parts of the shares of everybody else that had joined the trust. And so these trusts become enormously powerful. They are able to, help make decisions in companies because they own so much of the stock of that company. Then they start to exert a lot of control in a lot of companies, a lot of control in a lot of major sectors of industries, and it's very, very powerful. As the century goes on, this becomes sort of a target for politicians. Theodore Roosevelt becomes a major what's called trust buster, who are focused on the unbalanced power that some of these trusts have over industry, and that it's unhealthy for these groups to exert that kind of control. And so it becomes a point of debate, and it's not something that gets completely demolished. It does change over time so that things aren't completely controlled by trusts, but the idea of a trust is still very much with us today. You see all sorts of trusts. One of the most interesting trusts that's out there in the stock market today is a real estate investment trust. Basically, these are groups that own lots and lots of property, like say 600 or like 6,000 properties in the United States, that they might be a Walgreens or a Dollar General or different things like that. They're all underneath this umbrella, and you as an investor can go and you can invest in this trust. They're called a REIT, R-E-I-T, Real Estate Investment Trust. And so you as an investor can go and give $50 and have a share of this trust, and then those trusts by law have to kick back like 90% of their profits to those investors. And so that's a different form, but very much in the same line. And so that all started in this sort of mid to late 1800s era of financial development in the United States. It's a very interesting time to see all of this coming to be. So, by the way, this is one of the most famous pictures. I don't know if you can see it with the way that the video is recording. It has my, let's see if I can switch. No, I can't change it right now, but the way that he's holding the arm of a chair and the way that this picture was lit, this is known as J.P. Morgan's knife picture, because it looks like he's holding a knife in his hand, the way that the edge of the chair kind of looks. But anyway, he was holding a chair, but just a random fact there. But I think that is where we'll wrap it up today. You can look at the last two videos we have here with Standard Oil and check those out. I hope you are doing, again, I hope you're doing very well. as everybody says, wash your hands and stay healthy. And if you run into any challenges with the class, I know everybody's schedules are really in flux right now, let me know and we'll try to work through it. But be in communication and feel free to ask any questions. And I hope you have a good rest of the week. All right. Have a good one.